This was the shooter. Property of Allah. You couldn't make this more obvious than it already is. You know what's interesting? Creators just like Laura Loomer decided to go on social media saying that this was an attack from Islam without the shooter's identity even being revealed yet. But then the story just doesn't add up to me. As you can see, in a tragic incident, if you didn't know, in Austin's entertainment district, a mass shooting has left 3 individuals dead, including the gunman, and 14 others injured. The shooting happened outside Buford's Background Beer Garden just before 2 a.m. along 6th Street. Like it says right here, the entertainment district has a heavy police presence on weekends, which you would obviously know about, and officers were able to confront the gunman within a minute of the first call for help. The shooter, like it says here, was identified as 53-year-old Naga Diagne. The law enforcement official and another person familiar with the matter said. Tom Bruder, a neighbor who has lived in the area since 2015, said he believed the family that lived at the house were devout Muslim. The woman who lived at the house wore a hijab, and one of the cars had window decals referencing Allah. He said, "I'm shocked that this happened here." Bruder, who served 7 years in the Navy, the family was quiet and seemed nice. They seemed like a normal American family living in the suburbs. But of course, FBI official Alex Doran said at a Sunday morning press briefing that while it's way too early to determine motivation, evidence found on the shooter and in his vehicle indicate a possible link to extremism. Okay, so show what was inside the vehicle, because I'm hearing a lot of different reports. But hey, who doesn't love pointing the finger at Iran, right? It's almost like people don't know what psychological warfare is by now and how easily it can be used to manipulate you. Sort of like, I don't know, supporting another useless war that we shouldn't be a part of to begin with.
The mass shooting that recently happened in Austin, Texas a few days ago was an inside job, and let me explain why. So first of all, the mass shooter wore a Property of Allah hoodie and had a Quran in his car. Now, those two pieces of evidence seem a little like too good to be true and like too obvious for me, right? Like, of course, out of all things that guy could wear or have in his car, it was those two. A couple days after we decided to bomb the shit out of Iran. Like, come on. On top of that, one thing I found very interesting is that he wore an Iranian t-shirt. I don't know if it was Iranian flag or whatever, but he was wearing an Iranian t-shirt underneath his Property of Allah hoodie. Like, of course. What's really interesting, though, is if you do a little bit of research or you already know kind of like what Islam's like, Iran is a Shia Muslim country, and Senegal, where the mass shooter is from, is a Sunni Muslim country. Sunnis, Shias don't get along, don't like each other, hate each other, kill each other all the time. So why would a Senegal native guy wear a pro-Iran t-shirt? Doesn't make sense because those countries don't like each other. So we have the Quran, the too obvious hoodie, and a t-shirt that it doesn't even make sense for him to wear. That's a little weird to me. On top of that, this other piece of evidence I found, and I did my own research on because I wanted to double check its accuracy, because a lot of stuff nowadays can be deepfakes, AIs, bullshit, or whatever, just to gain, clicks and traction on people's posts. But I used Google Trends to see if the mass shooter was looked up in different places over the past 90 days and 12 months, and this is what I found. So we'll start with Israel. There's the mass shooter's name right there. I put in Israel past 12 months. He was researched over 100 times in Israel between July and August of 2025. So months ago. That's really weird, right? That doesn't make sense to me. Now let's swap over to Washington, D.C. Past 90 days. Mass shooter's name 77 times in December 27th of 2025. A few months ago, right? Can anyone explain how that makes sense?
Right, so first and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai Ba'Shem Rakakudash. Yahweh is to this world ignorantly calls God. Yahushai is to this world ignorantly calls Jesus. Ba'Shem means in the name, Rakam means spirit, and Kodash means holy. And that's all in the Paleo Hebrew. Also want to give double honors to the elder bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. And as you saw right there, a recent attack, and, people are pretty much saying that, it was set up, it was an inside job, because it looks too obvious, to point the finger towards Iran. And as you can see right there in the thumbnail of NBC News, U.S. and Israel expand war with Iran with joint sea and land operations. Right, so this thing is turning up. Okay, and it goes back to the prophecies, right? If you watch any of my videos, that's one of the favorite things I like to say is it always goes back to the prophecies. So let's go to Joel chapter 2 and verse 20. It says, "But I will remove far off from you the northern army and will drive him into a land barren and desolate, with his face toward the east sea and his hinder part toward the utmost sea. And his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things." And that's what we're seeing. Okay, we're seeing how the Northern Army, talking about North America, this army, is going to be removed, okay, from this place it's at and sent to a land barren and desolate, aka those deserts, aka Saudi Arabia, Iran, that region. Okay, World War III will happen, and what we're seeing is the beginning of it. Right, it's just the beginning, because we do know that, hey, this thing can't go nuclear until we see the mark of the beast, the RFID microchip, be made mandatory. So it says, "And when ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be ye not troubled, for such thing must needs be, but the end shall not be yet." Right, so we're not even supposed to be troubled at this. If anything, we're supposed to be excited, okay, because we're seeing the prophecies finally play out on a faster scale. Right, it's literally as it says, those birth pains. Okay, what is that in Second Ezra? Second Ezra chapter 16 and verse 37, it says, "Behold, the plagues draw nigh and are not slack, as when a woman with child in the 9th month bringeth forth her son, with 2 or 3 hours of her birth great pains compass her womb, which pains when the child cometh forth, they slack not a moment. Even so shall not the plagues be slack to come upon the earth, and the world shall mourn, and sorrow shall come upon it on every side." Right, so likening, okay, a pregnant woman to the troubles, the plagues that are going to be happening in this world. And one thing about, pregnancy is that, you have those contractions, okay, and those contractions get more and more intense until the baby comes out. So that's what we're seeing is, contractions. Something will pop off, it'll get hot for a little bit, and then it'll chill. And then a couple months later, something pops off, and then it chills. But one thing is that as we get near towards the end, those contractions are only going to get more intense and more closely timed until that son, which is Yahushua, comes back. So going back to Mark chapter, I believe it was 3. Mark chapter 3, and I'll read this in verse 23. It says, "And he called them unto him, and said unto them in parables, How can Satan cast out Satan? And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And if Satan rise up against himself and be divided, he cannot stand, but hath an end." And that's what we're seeing in this country, is that these Edomites are divided. Okay, you have pro-MAGA, MAGA supporters, which are pro-Israel, and then you have MAGA supporter, which realize that, Israel is dragging us to World War III, and we got to put America first. Right, so there's a division in even the people that, voted for DJ Trump. And, let's not go into the division how these small hats and, the Edomite Bible thumpers over here are at each other's necks. Right, here it is, the rabbis talk about how, Rome, modern Christendom is Edom, right? That's what they literally say. And, the so-called modern Christians have realized that, these J-issues are the problem. But one thing they don't realize is that they're both Edomites. Okay, they both go back to the same people. And that's that division right there. So even when you look at the political system, left-wing, right-wing, Republican, Democrat, But it all goes back to the same bird. Okay, it's all controlled at the top by these banking families, the elites, which now the world is finally realizing that is not just a conspiracy theory. You know, it is facts. It's conspiracy facts. But let's go into the scripture in 2 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 11. It says, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. Right? And we're not ignorant of how these devils operate. Okay, we understand their psychological warfare. We understand the inside jobs. You know, what happened, with those towers was an inside job. We understand their end game, their plan, their social media. Okay, we're not ignorant of his devices. And ultimately what these people were talking about, it looks like it's one of those devices. So, Iran war begins. Black America on alert. Look at that. So, hey, things are only going to intensify. And Lord willing, Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai, it comes back soon because this place is out of pocket. And the only way to fix it is through that fire. So with that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai B'Hashem HaKakodash, and double honors to the elder bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. Shalom, Shalom.